after making yesterday's video on the SBA's audit report, really looking for fraud. I don't even know if they used the word fraud in there, but I was really hung up on the fact that there were businesses out there that were sole proprietors that claimed to have 1 million employees. So like I was looking back at this and, my first reaction was, okay, there's 1 million employees. So they must have gotten the bulk of the money and that's why they're looking at all this fraud. And let me just pull it up right here. So these are the sole proprietors. So there were 15 applications. So 15 sole proprietors said that they had 1 million employees. And again, thinking that they got a ton of money. They didn't. They only got up to $10,000. So that was the cap, which made it even more baffling. Why would somebody go out there and say they had 1 million employees when the most they were going to get anyways is $10,000? I don't know if they were hoping to get more. I don't know. But this report right here, or this graph right here, really doesn't show the whole story, which is also baffling because that's a huge breakout right here. From 2 to 500 employees. So you can't really tell anything from this graph, or not enough, because I would assume that a lot of sole proprietors really didn't realize that they had to put their EIN, which also is another question. How many of these sole proprietors actually do have EINs? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, is a sole proprietor can only have employees if they get an EIN or if they have a retirement plan. So if you're a sole proprietor, you can use your social security number for these applications. That's fine, but you can't claim employees because you can't have any employees. There's another thing that I was wondering too is how many sole proprietors would go in there and say they're sole proprietor or actually be a sole proprietor and then realize, hey, I need to hire employees, go to hire employees, but didn't get their EIN before they hire the employees. I don't know how many of those would be in limbo. And it's possible there's a lot out there because businesses start and close all the time. And obviously last year was probably a lot more activity than normal. But looking at these numbers with 1 million at 15 applications, that's what they should really go after. What's shocking to me is that they didn't just pick up the phone and call, because there's not that many. They could have just literally picked up the phone and started going through those numbers for 15, for 41, and then start working on the 348. I mean, you can hire like one or two people to actually do that part. But the 542,493 number from 2 to 500 doesn't really tell us a lot. But if we scroll up a little bit, this is where it breaks it down. It's almost like this is a better representation, but this one was more shocking to see that 15 applicants had 1 million employees. Now, let's just look that up for a second. So how many, let me put it down here so you can see it. How many businesses have 1 million employees? Let's see what comes up. I don't know. A list of the largest companies. So here we go. U.S. Defense Department has 3.2 million. Walmart has 2.3 million. And what else do we have here? We have Amazon at 1.335 million. So that's just, I mean, can you imagine Jeff Bezos filling this thing out saying, hey, I'm going to apply for the EIDL grant for $10,000 and we have over 1 million employees. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, that's basically what you're looking at with 1 million employees. There's not many companies, obviously, who have 1 million employees or more, let alone 500,000. I mean, these are sole proprietors. This isn't all applicants. This is only those that said they were a sole proprietorship. Now, the SBA says this. SBA is required under Section 31 U.S. Code 7701 to ask for taxpayer identification numbers on the COVID-19 EIDL application, and did so. SBA Form 3501, COVID-19 blah, 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 format approved by the office, blah, blah, blah. And then it says here, applicants to submit their EIN applicable or social security number. However, the website version of the application stated EIN SSN, employee identification number, or SSN, social security number for sole proprietorship, which may have been confusing to applicants. So here is my question. I've built a few websites. I built our company's website. I built a handful of them, and I've worked with forms, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that you can have conditional logic on your form. So if they checked off they're a sole proprietor, it shouldn't have allowed you to put more than one. There should be an error message that comes up, says you are a sole proprietorship with an SSN, therefore you can't apply for more than one. Why are we going to waste money on this? And that's the thing that gets me, is that we paid money, the government, which is our taxpayer dollars, paid money to distribute this money, which was already ours to begin with. It's going back to the small businesses that need help, and then they're paying more money to have an audit, and they're paying more money to have the SBA acknowledge that audit, and then at the very bottom, what are they doing? They're going to go in and they're going to say, okay, well, we're going to hire yet again a third party because the Office of the Inspector General and the SBA wasn't enough to do the audit. You know, either give it to, I don't know who you give it to, but a third party? Like, why all of a sudden do we need a third party? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, if somebody, just pick up the phone, call those businesses, start with that number, because that is what would be considered egregious. Not the small business sole proprietorship that claimed two when they may have only had one or may have counted somebody else. I don't know. I would start there with the most egregious numbers. I'm trying to find out. They said they're going to hire some third party to do an audit on this stuff. So that's just more of a cost to go after these things. And then they have $1 million for, and this is for the independent contractors, same story. So independent contractors is also a bizarre one without an EIM. An independent contractor with any employees or $1 million, that doesn't make sense at all. That to me, I mean, in this report, the SBA is defending themselves that they did things right, and I'm not refuting that at all. The SBA, whatever, they distributed is probably the best that they could. There was a ton of issues going on, but this is the first time that we've ever really seen this mass amount of money going out in this program. I mean, they constantly were saying it. They hadn't done this much business in like years, combined in like a couple of weeks. So it's definitely going to get tripped up. But to be able to easily apply for it, even though the SBA is saying, hey, we didn't need to verify it with things like the IRS, where they have the information. They didn't need to do those kinds of things, but they could have easily had conditional logic on the form, which would have ensured less errors. And that's the thing that's really frustrating. If it's straight up fraud, I get it. 1 million employees, yeah, that's bizarre. I mean, 1 million employees, I don't even know what to say to that. But the individuals who are going in just trying to fill this thing out made a legitimate error, and then to spend all this time and resources going after and recouping this amount of money. And it does add up to quite a bit. It's $4.5 billion. It's not a drop in the bucket, but it's staggering to me. What do you think in the comments? Let me know in the comments down below what you think on this stuff. If you were a sole proprietor, I mean, I'm sure nobody's going to want to say they were a sole proprietor with a social security number, and then they claim they had 10 employees. But if you did, and you legitimately have an EIN, let me know in the comments down below. If you're like, hey, I was a legitimate sole proprietor, and this thing was such a mess, and I did not apply with my EIN, yet I did actually have employees. That's what I'm interested in, into understanding that. Now, the numbers do break down. Again, why would you put 1 million? I mean, I think they just put that there for the shock factor. And even here, they made one additional applicant. One additional applicant claimed 0 employees, but was awarded $2,000 by the EIDL grant. So obviously, that's a glitch. There's a glitch of some sort. But we're going to spend that much time over $1,000? It just doesn't make any sense. I know there were a lot of struggling small businesses and people who didn't get the money who probably should have. Unfortunately, I don't know what to say to that, because everybody was talking about the EIDL grant and applying for it. I know we did a couple of YouTube videos on it, more than 1 or 2, on how to do this stuff to make sure that you're up to date on it. But it just doesn't make any sense. And with these numbers right here, just breaking it down further, and these are the sole proprietor numbers we were just looking at. This is a little bit clearer picture. This is where you can really see, okay, they got the full 300,751 applicants got that money. And that's where clearly $3 billion went to those individuals. But that doesn't mean that those were fraudulent either. I mean, I suppose, maybe all 25,000 of these were fraudulent. But just by the numbers, again, they're also doing the math that it should have been only 543 million. Why? Because 542,000 multiplied by 1,000, that's where they're getting the number from. And they're saying that about 3.5 billion exceeded applicant eligibilities according to the agency policy that limited funds to 1,000 per employee. So that is really the biggest issue, is there was a flaw in the application. And it wasn't the question, it was the fact that there was no trigger set up to say this application should be filled out appropriately. And I don't remember how the application was, but what if you only put 2 digits for your social security number? You probably couldn't get to the next page. Again, that's conditional logic. So you need, I don't know how you missed that. I really don't. A simple form. Even a small business can get a simple form that would prevent the applicant from moving to the next page if they didn't fill it out correctly. If they ended up saying, I'm a sole proprietor with no EIN, yet I have 10 employees. So that should have been a triggering factor. I don't know. I know they don't want to just move on because if it's incorrect, they want to recoup the money. But it just seems such a waste. As if they could have just gone back and fixed one little thing, they could have avoided this entire report and saved all of that money to be distributed to other businesses. But it's probably not 100% was fraud. There was probably rampant errors, legitimate errors, that the money probably was distributed correctly. That people were, this is my actual employee. I'm going to actually use it to do what it's intended to do, to keep my business open, to pay people to work, to get things done. So I don't know. I wonder, this report makes you think that there's a lot of fraud out there. But then again, I wonder if it was just positioned to make you think there was a lot more fraud than actually there was. And the SBA seems to be cooperative with this investigation, but they disagree with it. And they're just saying, hey, this is the rules of the road. So there's that one flaw that I can figure out that they should have done. They should have owned up to that one form. But short of that, the SBA, I don't think, did anything wrong. And I'm sure the vast majority of these small businesses, which get painted in a negative light, were probably just fine. Again, I don't know. You know your own finances. You know if you got this EIDL grant, of whether or not you did it correctly or incorrectly. And I don't know what the remedy is going to be on this. Or how they're going to go about it. They're just going to use a third party. But it is kind of interesting. I don't know. Not a lot of people commented on the last one on this. Probably just people are looking at this report like, this is unbelievable. Of course, this is exactly what we were expecting. But I don't know. I just wanted to point that out. 1 million employees for some of these companies. Obviously, that was, I mean, you just hit one and hold down the Z. I don't know. Could you have put 2 million employees? I don't even know if you could have put that number. Maybe that was just something that they just hit the keys and just were trying to fill it out as quickly as possible. I mean, statistically, it's extremely small. 15 plus 40, let's see, 15 plus 41 plus 348. I mean, that's where I would start. But again, couldn't they just hire 1 or 2 people to, hey, start calling these people right now before this report goes out tomorrow. Just get through these numbers. Not that many. Takes a few hours to make those calls. Just get 3, 4, 5 people on that, and they're gonna get to those people and say, hey, you need to call us right now. We're opening up an investigation on these particular sole proprietors. I don't think they needed to wait for it to go to this report, but I think they like the shock and the awe factor that 15 applicants put a million employees. I don't know. Hopefully they can shed some light on that, and hopefully they will. I'm sure some journalists will be knocking at their door saying, hey, we got to figure out who these 15 sole proprietor applicants were who received just $10,000. They didn't receive, $100 million or something. It's just crazy. Anyways, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and leave your comments down at the bottom.